Okay, so we're going to look at mistakes with active and passive voice, okay, especially in terms of the passive voice, some of the forms, when to use it or not. And we're going to look at a digital documentary introduction paragraph, okay? And it's about prisons, okay? Let's start. The penal system of a society is addressed one of the core questions. So here we have the passive, okay? But you notice after the passive, we have kind of a noun phrase, which is the object. And usually we don't have an object after the passive. So that's one idea that kind of tells you, I should probably use the active here. The penal system of a society addresses, okay, not the passive form, simply addresses one of the core questions in criminal justice. How should we deal with those who break the law? When the courts are deciding on the sentence to be imposed, that's good. To be imposed is a passive on an offender. That's correct. The sentence to be put on an offender. Okay, there is one thing that must be took into consideration. Passive is correct here, but look at the past participle, right? We have to make sure we have the right forms. Must be taken into consideration. So be careful of the past participle. Whether or not the punishment will discourage the offender and others from committing the same crime in the future. Public safety is negatively affected. So we have a passive here, but in this case, the past participle, right, is ed, is negatively affected by a high recidivism rate, which measures the tendency of convicted criminals to reoffend. Okay. In addition, the future of offenders is greatly impacted from their time in prison. Well, this passive, I think, is correct, is greatly affected, is greatly impacted. But notice the use of the preposition from. I notice in some languages they use from with the passive like this, but in English we use by, right? It's greatly impacted by their time in prison. Many of them are unable to break out of the cycle of repeat offending. Break out, active, good. In Hong Kong, around 24% of prisoners is readmitted. So the passive is okay to here, readmitted to prison. Okay, the prisoners receive the action, right? But notice we have to be careful since we're using the verb to be, we have to be careful about subject-verb agreement. And 24% of prisoners are, right, plural, are readmitted to prison custody each year for a new crime that commits. The crime doesn't do the action of commit, right? People commit crimes. So we have to use the passive here. A new crime that is committed within 5 years of release. Okay. While this figure considered low by many people. Figure means number. And notice we have the by, so that gives us a good sense that the passive is needed here, but we don't have the verb to be. And a passive, basically, passive verb, main verb, needs the verb to be. So while this figure is considered low by many people, it could perhaps further reduce. I think the figure doesn't do the action of reduce. We reduce the number or figure. So we need the passive here. It could perhaps be further reduced, passive form. And we use be because it follows the modal verb could, right? It could be, could perhaps be further reduced if appropriate changes are, again, a mistake with the participle, are made to our current penal system. In this documentary, we will look into the prison systems of Norway, Singapore, and Russia and see if we can learn from their correctional policies and practices. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so look out for participle mistakes and you know, the verb to be and whether you need the passive or not, okay? But, you know, maybe you should rewatch this video just to, you know, review some of these mistakes and look out for them, you know, and think about when you use the passive or the active. Both can be used. You don't want to overuse the passive too much, though, especially in spoken speech, but it is possible. Okay, good luck with it.